Thank you very much. Ms. González, you now have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Doyle and full committee ranking member Walden, calling him out on the way out, excuse me. Members of the subcommittee, thanks very much for having me. I'm here today on behalf of Free Press's 1.4 million members who are calling for reinstatement of the FCC's 2015 net neutrality rules and the return of the FCC's legal authority to protect us from ISP discrimination and abuse. I'm also here as a Mexican-American woman from a working-class family. My father grew up in a Los Angeles suburb where Mexicans were not allowed to live. I understand that millions of people who came before me, including members of this House, past and present, have fought against discrimination and for other causes that enabled me to be here today. I say this to underscore that what we're doing here really has impacts on real people's lives. The U.S. government has a long history of discrimination and racism. Indeed, it used the media system to legitimize the enslavement of Black people and the genocide and displacement of Native peoples. And although it's taken some steps to reduce racism and discrimination in certain aspects of American life, like housing, it's done little to remedy structural racism in the communications sector. The FCC's 2015 net neutrality order is one exception. That order gave the FCC clear authority to prevent and investigate shady ISP business practices, like, but not limited to, blocking, throttling, and discriminating against lawful content. The Trump FCC's 2017 decision to repeal that order was wildly unpopular. Polls show that 82% of Republicans, 90% of Democrats, and 85% of independents object. And people of color have been some of the most vocal critics, in part because we have more at stake. Never before in history have barriers to entry been lower for us to reach a large audience with our own stories and our own words, to start small businesses, to organize for change. This hits close to home for me because my best friend Vanessa is a blogger and small business owner. While she was pregnant and in the midst of the Great Recession, she was laid off from her job. And she began blogging from her apartment in 2010 after her daughter's birth. It was a labor of love. Her intention was to fill the void of content designed for and by parents of multiracial children. She began writing love letters to her daughter to ensure that the beauty and power of Black and brown women were front and center, even in a world that subjugates us at every turn. Vanessa's blog, desumama.com, underscores that mothers are the storytellers, dream keepers, and legacy builders for the next generation. Today, Desumama has a loyal following and is building understanding across cultures. It's also a successful business that has helped Vanessa supplement the family income and supported her journey to home ownership. The end of net neutrality that means that her voice might be drowned out by corporate media that can pay more to access her audience. Some of the same corporate media that have failed spectacularly to represent us. This could impair her family's livelihood and the reach of her cultural influence. And Vanessa cares so deeply about this issue that she actually flew here from Long Beach, California. She's sitting behind me today on her own dime to bear witness to this hearing. I'm not going to look back there, I'll get emotional, but she really believes that this is critical to her business model and to her ability to spread the word. So I'll get on to the lawyer points. In my testimony, I go into great detail about how ISPs have abused their power when net neutrality is not in place. I'll give just a few examples here. We've seen Comcast secretly block and slow file sharing apps. We've seen Metro PCS announce plans to block streaming from all providers except for YouTube. AT&T said it would disable the use of FaceTime over cell connections unless their customers paid for higher cost options. AT&T, Time Warner Cable, and Verizon deliberately limited capacity at ISP interconnection points, throttling Netflix. And those are just a few examples. And since the 2017 repeal, we've seen some seriously suspect ISP behavior that my colleague Danelle already touched on. But because the FCC's sworn off its authority to protect broadband consumers, it doesn't even have the power to investigate and look into this. And the real shame of this whole thing is that net neutrality was working. Chairman Pai's justification for the repeal was built on a mountain of lies. PI promised us that ISP investment and deployment declined under net neutrality and would expand following its repeal, but the numbers are in, and that's just not true. I hope this new Congress seizes the opportunity to right the wrongs of the PI FCC and restore fundamental protections to Americans. Thank you.